God. I mean, why are you still Mormon? Why do you not want to study the church? I'm born and raised Mormon. I'm studying the church. I'm learning the truth. Joseph Smith, the good guy, his church gone. I want it restored. How simple is that to understand? Why do Mormons hate me? That they want me dead? Unless they know that it isn't the true church. That they are the enemy that is seeking to overthrow America and the rest of the world. Even Russia. To stab Russia in the back. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because there's nothing the church can do to convince me they're true. Nothing. Not a single Mormon can bear a false testimony to me to convince me I'm wrong. That's next Sunday, not this Sunday, tomorrow. Why can't Mormons understand this? I'm under full attack. My life is destroyed. And here I am, doing a video for you. And you still won't believe.
In this location where much of the Book of Mormon was written, the translation occurred, I thought it would be wonderful to get the help from the history department with an original copy of the Book of Mormon. And I didn't want to trust myself with it. I don't have one, but we have one in the archives. And Brandon Metcalf, one of our church historians, was kind enough to come with artifacts. Brandon, tell us about these treasures that you've blessed us with.
Sure. So we've brought two artifacts that relate to the Book of Mormon. One is the 1830 edition, which would have been one of the 5,000 that was printed in Palmyra in the Grandin bookshop there. And we also brought, what's even more special is a page from the original manuscript of the Book of Mormon.
Oh, please, tell us more.
And so with the Book of Mormon, I just am so touched by these documents as I'm able to work around them. There's a spirit, there's a witness to these documents as you discuss the Book of Mormon and the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. You think about the sacrifice that the saints made. You think about the importance that they placed upon publishing the Book of Mormon and publishing the early revelations of the church. And one of the lessons that I love that we learn from these artifacts is it wasn't easy. And it's the same way in all of our lives, is that the Book of Mormon, you think of all things that maybe the Lord would have paved the way and made it easy, is to publish the Book of Mormon. Yeah. And trial after trial, Joseph Smith struggles along the way.
How does this differ from the Book of Mormon that I have?
Very little. You'll notice that there's very long paragraphs.
So there's 2 pages without an indentation.
Chapters and verses are definitely organized differently today. You have a nice index and cross references today. Yeah. But the words, very little changed over time. We've had changes where they went to subsequent editions, and Joseph, as seer and translator, did make changes here and there, but as far as word changes go, very, very little.
Interesting. Now tell us about the content of this precious page of the original.
So this is one of the few surviving pages of the original manuscript of the Book of Mormon. Moroni took the plates back, so this is as close as we get to the plates. But this is from Alma, section from part of chapter 33 and chapter 34, which talks about the need of the infinite atonement in our lives. You can see it wasn't stored in ideal conditions. Joseph himself kept the original manuscript in his possession. And then when they, later on in Nauvoo, he placed it in a cornerstone where it sat for just over 4 decades near the Mississippi River with high humidity and flooding. So most of it is not in great shape, as you can see.
But they wrote on both sides of the paper.
They wrote on both sides. What I love about this as sort of a witnessing document of the Book of Mormon, as you read all of the surviving portion of the original manuscript, it's free-flowing. There's almost no strikeouts.
Yeah.
There's no punctuation, which tells you that the Oliver and others that are helping his scribe are just writing as it
Just writing the
falls from
words.
the mouth of the prophet.
Yeah, as fast as they could.
And what's amazing to me is this is the one and only draft. You know, I can't compose an email to invite someone to lunch in one draft. And so that to me is just a remarkable testimony of the process in just over 60 working days.
Thank you for bringing those artifacts along. Thank you for your good work.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
Proud of you.
President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is commemorating a landmark moment in the latest installment of the Joseph Smith Papers.
These texts were vital to the restoration of the gospel in its fullness. This volume touches my heart deeply.
So there's one page that has Joseph Smith's handwriting on. There's slightly darker ink on these 3 lines. So this is Joseph Smith's handwriting.
Historian Dr. Robin Scott Jensen holds one of the most important and sacred documents for church members.
This manuscript is as if going back in time and reading Paul's epistles or reading the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
These are the original pages of the Book of Mormon manuscript. It's a key piece of scripture for members of the faith, translated by Joseph Smith, founder and first president of the church.
The Book of Mormon was what started it all. Joseph Smith, according to his own narrative, was visited by an angel where the angel told him about golden plates. Several years later, he was able to obtain those plates and translate the text of the Book of Mormon.
While the Book of Mormon has been in circulation since 1830, this original manuscript is now available to anyone who desires to see it.
This is the manuscript that was in the room with Joseph and Oliver on the table as the words of the Book of Mormon fell from the prophet's lips for the first time.
This is the document that is the closest to that miraculous experience as possible. This manuscript is the product of that divine translation.
The original manuscript was providing something much more valuable. It was allowing us to see Joseph Smith acting as seer, receiving an inspired text, word for word, from the Lord.
According to historians, only about 28% of the original manuscript is still in existence today.
There's an estimated 600 pages, and about 230 of them we have portions.
The majority of the document's pages were damaged by water in the 19th century while it was stored inside the cornerstone of the Nauvoo house.
There's not much of ether. Moroni is completely gone. But as you go up through the bottom of the manuscript on the top, First Nephi is fairly well preserved. Nephi obtains the records. This is of Nephi going back to Jerusalem to obtain the brass plates.
After Smith's martyrdom, the manuscript was scattered. Smith's widow, Emma Smith, remarried, and her second husband gave portions of it away to visitors in Nauvoo.
Louis Bideman had this manuscript, and he started handing it out to visitors. It was a souvenir.
Some of the manuscript's pages were torn into multiple fragments, but over time, historians started the painstaking process of gathering and putting the pages back together.
It's been kind of this historical serendipity where fragments just slowly accumulated into the church.
New multispectral imaging reveals the faintest markings compared to the same images photographed with 1950s technology.
There are pages where it's dramatically improved, where you can read the text, whereas before you couldn't.
We think, well, it would be so cool if everybody could come look at the actual artifact. Our feeling is that what we present in the book, it will be an even better experience in some ways because we've done so much work, painstaking work.
In total, the Joseph Smith Papers will encompass 26 volumes. This latest installment marks the 23rd volume published. The years-long project is possible by a private donation of Gail and her late husband, Larry H. Miller.
I know that this is a divine work. I know that it is an important, almost critical work for the church, for people to be able to go to the work of the Joseph Smith Papers and get the truth.
Travis Wingoodsell. Well, we can get to the literal, not literal history of the Book of Mormon. As I'm giving you this video on the final day of videos that I'll be allowed to do when I should be scanning books into digital format so that I don't have to carry them when I'm cast out of Utah. The video clip, I'm not sure if much will be taken out of the other clip with President Nelson discussing the Book of Mormon with a historian. I haven't watched that yet, so it's only 4-minute segments, so I should find out soon enough if something will be added to this video with it. But in the one that I will be putting in, the person in charge of the original manuscript pages of the Book of Mormon, which will be made available to only the filthy rich in the church in their 26 volume, I think they said. Though it should also be on the Joseph Smith Papers page, if not already. But he says Joseph Smith, according to his own narrative. And this is the whole problem with Mormonism, is the concept of parables, mythologies, symbolisms, metaphors, etc. are not understood. And there's a scripture on that. Let's find that. Matthew 13. The disciples come to Jesus, literally true, because Constantine said so, and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them, the people, in parables? He answered and said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away, even that he hath. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because they, I used this last night and botched it, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. This is exactly what that video clip illustrates. That Mormons, even the prophets of Jesus, don't understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing ye hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and not perceive. And then he continues on, For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed. This is also in Jacob, I think, or in one of the Nephi's. The Jews looking beyond the mark. They looked for things that they could not understand, that aren't real, rather than things that are simple, easy to understand, because that's too easy. We want something complicated. We want miracles, revelations, divine, sacred. You hear those words in that little clip, rather than they're human. They got information, they wrote a book, it's published, there you go. There's meaning in it. You know, Mormons can't accept that. It has to be a miracle. It has to be literally true. So, back to the Book of Mormonskis. And the one guy even said that this is the handwriting of Joseph Smith, because they're assuming Joseph and Oliver were working on it. Has anybody done an analysis of the handwriting to see if it actually is Oliver Cowdery's? Would they have been able to do that in the 3-month period of time? Because if you don't know the real church history, like I do, and I've been telling you in all sorts of videos, they had nothing to do with the writing of the Book of Mormon. So is it Joseph's that guy found in that one darkened place that was completely blank? You have to use some kind of x-ray viewer to see the original on the worn out page? Or was it somebody else's? Is anybody doing a linguistic analysis of the handwriting? Or are we just assuming because Joseph Smith said so in his narrative? These are things science must be able to confirm. But the church will not allow this, as they'll just say, oh, it's in our narrative, here it is, there it is. Everybody must believe, and that's that and that's this. Has anybody checked to see if Sidney Rigdon and his handwriting match? Anybody checked? Because I've done the videos where there's plagiarism going on. Writing claiming to be by Joseph or scribes of Joseph that aren't. You know, it's back in those days it was easier to forge documents because linguistic studies and fingerprint and handwriting comparisons in forensics weren't as developed back then. You had to get specialists that were hard to find and mostly in England, if there were any at all at that period of time. And so, if you wanted to forge something, it was more easier to do. If you saw the Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio movie about based on the true story of the guy who forged checks and then got caught and then helped the FBI catch other people involved in forgeries. You know, that was a situation where in the beginning of check making, it was more easier to get away with criminal activity, especially with somebody with the tools and equipment to do so. Alright, so here we have the Book of Mormon. And I've got to read not the brief explanation, not the testimony. So again, the testimony of Joseph Smith, the prophet Joseph Smith's own words about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. So this isn't accurate, because again, you're assuming this is a real, literal history, not a story being told with a message like a parable. And it's horrifying that Mormons were MAGA before MAGA, believing in things that aren't real rather than in reality, trusting in science, because Mormons don't trust science. Science is bad, science is evil, because it says that this isn't literal history. And so, of course, they have to dismiss science. And yeah, it's taken from the Joseph Smith history from 1838. That's also what needs to be understood here, is that this wasn't during the time of the first publication. Here we go. Here's from the Book of Mormon, an account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from the plates of Nephi. If you remember Vincenzo di Francesca from How Rare a Possession, he says he found the Book of Mormon but didn't know it was the Book of Mormon because it didn't have title and publishing stuff for him to know the source. He just saw it as a book, and he assumes, as the makers of the video assisted with that it was a literal history. And I don't know how many of you know about War of the Worlds. It was first read on radio way back in the day. On the radio, whoa, on the radio. And as it was being read, people were tuning in to listen, and there was a big scare because of his reading of his book. People thought there was an actual alien invasion of Earth, and they panicked. And thus his book became famous. This is a sign of an excellent writer who's able to write a book and convince people of its reality and get people thinking about the words in it, about the precepts contained within it. And that's the whole purpose of the Book of Mormon. It has nothing to do with being a literal history, because that's all it says here. You know, and then Joseph Smith adds to it by making up another story about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. Talking first about a visit from two personages who go unnamed, but Mormons, in order to make it literal history, give them names that are wrong. They miss the meaning and intent of the stories. They look beyond the mark for things that cannot be real, that violate the laws of science, the laws of physics. And so, when it says, wherefore it is an abridgment of the record of the people of Nephi, you're supposed to go, now, who, as we liken the scriptures unto ourselves, they give you clues within the Book of Mormon as to how to interpret it. And Mormons still, and so you're supposed to be going over each story and how it applies in our life. Who are the Nephites? Who are the Lamanites? Who is the great and abominable church of the latter days? And this is why the prophets don't want Mormons to think in this term. See, they all talk about, oh yeah, liken the Book of Mormon unto yourself, but it's literal history. It is based on that. And Nelson comes out at the beginning of the See the Original Book of Mormon clip. saying this is the foundation of the church. It's critical. Sure. And so, how do I get this through to Mormons who want to believe in witchcraft rather than in reality? That's miracles. It's witchcraft. And yes, witchcraft may be glamorous, especially with the Red Witch that's come out with the series and is going to be in Doctor Strange, I believe. The sister of the woman who assassinated the Joker. Still upset with that. And so it had to be given a posthumous Oscar as a result. But I digress. A drug overdose. 10 things I hate about you. Another one of his movies, a classic. And so here we have, again, an account of Lehi and his wife Sariah and his 4 sons being called, beginning at the eldest, Laman, Lemuel, Sam, and Nephi. Or in other words, I, Nephi, wrote this record. It does not state that Joseph Smith wrote the record. Never. Joseph Smith does not say, I wrote this record. Well, it's because he translated it by the gift and power of God, Travis. Okay. You've missed the whole point. You have to be careful about what is said and what is not said. And so let's go over chapter 1 again. I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents. Mortal parents. Did you notice this? Remember the 7-hour series of Exodus patterns in the Book of Mormon. It's not about Jesus coming from outer space, leading Mormons in an exodus back to Missouri. Again, you're not even bothering to do research in your own church history. I mean, you have to dig through the documents to find it. 19 July 1840. Joseph Smith says, most of you think that we're going back to Missouri. No, you're wrong. It's not Missouri. Southern Illinois. The mountain cities of Zion and New Jerusalem must be built before the Christ comes. Who's the Christ? Moses chapter 7. Blessed is he through whom the seed of Messiah comes. And Mary, remember? Women don't have seed. It's not through women. Men determine male or female, not women. So it's the seed of man. Mortal man is the Messiah. And yet you look beyond the mark. You trust the false Christ of Christians, Constantine. He's their founder. He created Jesus as literal history, turning the gospel narratives, which were apocalyptic literature, stories with parable meaning for the latter days, into history documents. Exactly what the church did under Brigham Young. Interesting. Lots of parallels. Created their own God, just like Constantine did. Created their own doctrine, just like Constantine. Created their own theology, just like Constantine. Created their own historical sites, just like Constantine. And Mormons still don't see it. They want to be Christian. Oh, we have so much in common. We're Christian too. Yeah, because our church has Jesus in it. Yours doesn't. So we're the true church. Because that's the name of our Christ. Jesus. Not Amen. Jesus. Anyway, therefore I was taught somewhat in the learning of my father. So Nephi is a junior, being taught after his father, and having seen many afflictions in the course of my days, nevertheless, having been highly favored of the Lord in all my days, yea, having had a great knowledge of the goodness and the mysteries of God, therefore I may make a record of the proceeding in my days. Have you figured out yet what's going on here? Joseph Smith Jr. is being said to be the author as Nephi. His father, therefore, Lehi, is Joseph Smith Sr. Joseph Smith was taught about all this stuff that's contained in the Book of Mormon, which, very next verse, from his father. And when you know the real church history of Joseph Smith's family in Vermont, with the New Israelites and the York Rites, not Scottish Rites, Freemasonry. So all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of research to do unless you can find those videos of mine. And if you don't bother to do those researches, why are you Mormon? Why don't you want to know about the church? Why don't you care about the church? Is it just a club for you? Oh yeah, we're the Mormons. Huh, you're not. Is that all that church is for you? You were born in Mormon, you'll die Mormon. It's a club, it's a group. Seriously? It's a gang? That's how you want to treat the church, huh? You have no interest in actually learning about it. Learning about the origins. Learning the truth. Because any of us who do know the church is lying to us. That's the big problem the church has had with a massive exodus from the church. People are actually doing research and going, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what we're told. We're being lied to, we're out. So the remaining Mormons, why are you still in the church? Oh, you're not studying, so that you continue to be deceived by them. And so we learn the New Israelites, as well as the York Rites Masons, yea, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. And if you know anything about the Rosetta Stone, the learning of the Greeks, the language of the Egyptians. So they're aware of Jean Champollion. And I know that the record which I make is true. And I make it with my own hand, and I make it according to my knowledge. See, if you don't understand the real church history of 9/11/1826 in Canandaigua, New York, you're going to miss what is being said here. Because you think it's literal. For it came to pass. Critics criticize that phrase. They shouldn't. It was written for a purpose and a reason. In the commencement of the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. Do they have it here? They don't, because in the digital form they remove the... You have to look for the asterisks. Oh, no, it's in the... Bruce R. put it in the chapter heading. About 600 BCE. Come on, Bruce. Even back then they knew it was 597 BCE. Though there was another guy who's wrong who thinks 596. Or is it? Yeah, it's 596. The debate between them, and William Foxwell Albright is right in this one case. Everything else he's wrong. I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. He's wrong with his altar god. He does a little pamphlet for his decipherment, and it's all wrong. Oh my God, nobody's even bothered to check him, to peer review him, at least. And everybody just says, oh, he's so true, wow. And they continue on down the wrong path because they don't check them. Just like Mormons, they don't check the church. Church says, well, according to Joseph Smith, this is literal history. Nobody checks them. And so you end up coming up with all sorts of miraculous witchcraft fantasy stuff that isn't based in reality, in order to maintain the belief that it's literal history. And so, do you understand the significance of this? If this is literal history, in the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, 597 BCE. So when is Jesus born, if it's literal history too? Both the Gospels and the Book of Mormon are literal history? 4 CE. If this were literally true, and the dating is accurate, as they say, that's when Jesus was born, 4 CE. Notice it's not 1 CE, because Mormons, again, the Doctrine and Covenants, the coming forth of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, April 6th, 1830, in the year of our Lord. Oh, Jesus was born in 1 CE, yay! And so where are those signs in the heavens for his birth? Well, we have this thing called the science of astronomy. There were none. We have the technology. We have the Urim and Thummim. I've done it myself. I've got a Urim and Thummim. Nothing. But guess what? 4 CE, April 8th. There is a sign in the heavens over Jerusalem. And by over, I mean north of Jerusalem. In Russia. If you're not going to bother to do the research, this is what Mormon apologists should be focused on. And they don't. They focus on the tangents, looking beyond the mark, trying to make excuses for witchcraft. The divine power of God. Oh, we're not going to humanize Joseph. He was divine. He was mortal. If you cut him, he will bleed. Where does that come from? If you cut me, will I not bleed? Sounds like Shakespeare or something like that, but anyway. And so this is not literal history then, is it? So what is the first year being talked about? Who is this Zedekiah? Because Joseph and Joseph are already identified in this story as Nephi and Lehi. My father Lehi having dwelt in Jerusalem all his days. Oh, well, Senior dwelt in the United States of America in all his days. Huh. America is Jerusalem? Yeah, the new Israelites, among others that came to America, believed that America was to be the place for the New Jerusalem. Carly Simon, New Jerusalem. Beautiful song. And so Zedekiah is a president of the United States. So what then is the first year being talked about here? Is it George Washington? Because again, latter days. There came in that same year only one, me, prophesying unto the Mormons that they must repent, or the great city Jerusalem must be destroyed. Only me. That's my #1 video on YouTube of all time, on both all channels. It's almost at 39,000. And that was only given because the second wife at the time demanded that I give her the date for the Exodus. So I searched my Urim and Thummim and saw the Sunday lesson which corresponded. But yeah, that was only the first year. I've learned since then. And so you also need to understand the historical template that is being used here. Who is the real Zedekiah, king of Judah? What was his first year? Well, it was 597 BCE. What happened? Why is he the king of Judah in 597 BCE? What happened in the real history as a template for this passage? Well, Babylon came and conquered. It was the first time Babylon came and conquered. They had just become a nation, overthrew Assyria. And so, in order to ensure that they receive the tribute from all of the tribal states, tribal kingdoms, they had to send their military out to ensure that there's a new boss in town and you have to pay your dues, making them an offer they can't refuse. That's how Babylon did it. And so they made it to Jerusalem, took out the king who refused to give in. He tried to form a resistance and, well, yeah, removed. And their puppet king Zedekiah was put on the throne to be loyal to Babylon and give them tribute. No longer to Egypt, now it's to Babylon. Because Assyria only made it to Shechem, northern Israel. So Babylon extended it further into Judah. And so as a template, and I use the word template because those who know the truth that Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon, which he got the Solomon Spalding Manuscript at the Pittsburgh Press, which is south of Harmony, Pennsylvania, which Harmony, Susquehanna River, Pennsylvania was no longer called Harmony because the Postal Service can't have two of the same towns in the same state. So Harmony, Susquehanna River changed their name before the Smiths arrived in Palmyra. Before the Smiths arrived in Palmyra. So when you're doing research on church history and you find a document post change of Harmony's name and it's called Harmony still, you got to go, this is an error. Why is it an error? What is the reason for the error? Nobody's bothering to do that. Only me. And so the Solomon Spalding Manuscript is the template for the major portion of the Book of Mormon. And the 116 pages that had to be rewritten illustrate that template with the names Lehi, Lehi, but Nephites, Lamanites, Lehites, because the townspeople where Solomon Spalding was read to them the book, his book, manuscript, as they recognized it. And so Mormonism Unveiled was published, exposing that the Book of Mormon came from Solomon Spalding. Way back in 1834, I think it was the publication. And so understanding the literal church history will help explain and how to decode or translate, which is code for decode, until Joseph Smith got the Egyptian papyri, and all of a sudden he wants to be an actual translator now, not a decoder. And so he learns Hebrew from Rabbi Sykes, and is working on Egyptian that he has learned from Jean Champollion's discoveries. And Moses 7, I went over yesterday with you, yeah, they know about Atum, the God who created man from tears and with his hand, as I went over that with you in that video yesterday. For today's lesson in Sunday school, which you're being good and staying home, right? And so now you know the template being used here. So it's not just any president of the United States, it's a puppet president. I got to see Bill Maher. Still talks about a puppet president. Everybody knows it. And yet nobody puts the pieces together with the Book of Mormon, as Mormons have the answer right here. And so how do we know that that's the case? Well, we can skip down, or we can lead into it by reading. So verse 5, wherefore it came to pass that my father Lehi, as he went forth, prayed unto the Lord even with all his heart in behalf of his people, because he's a prophet warning about the destruction of America. So here's Joseph Sr. and Jr. warning of the destruction of America that is coming. And it came to pass that as he prayed, there came a literally true pillar of fire that dwelt upon a rock before him. And I'm sure it's nothing like a burning bush. That's literally true. It actually happened for Moses. But there's the parallels. And he saw and heard much, because of the things which he saw and heard, he did quake and tremble exceedingly. See, here you have a pillar of fire on a rock like a crystal ball. Or in a hat. You see what they're doing here? None of this is historical. This is coded information trying to warn us of the destruction of America in the first year of a puppet king. But there's a period of time, as we're about to find out. And it came to pass that he returned to his own house in America, and he cast himself upon his bed, being overcome with the Spirit and the things which he had seen. The literal history, Joseph Smith Sr. was the master mason of Canandaigua, New York, at the Lodge, the York Rites Lodge, not Scottish Rites Lodge, York Rites Lodge. There are too many people, even to this day, who do not understand the difference pre-1826. That knowledge is going. It's going, and the church wants it gone. Because the church will not allow Mormons to know this information. They've gone to great lengths to conceal it and cover it up on Wikipedia pages, to spread it out, to speculate and put historical authors rather than primary source documents, saying, oh, it's an author. It's not the primary source document of the actual lodge membership records, and those of the ranking of them. Well, Heber C. Kimball said they were destroyed. Why would he lie? Again, who's trying to destroy America? The great and abominable church. Okay. And so, yes, the visitor about the warning of the latter-day destruction of America is William Morgan. So now do you see the Joseph Smith history? It's William Morgan who came to Joseph Smith Sr. and Jr. learned about it. An abridgment of the record of my father. See, because he was arrested in Canandaigua. What was he doing in Canandaigua? He lived in Batavia. Why is he in Canandaigua? He's supposed to be writing the book. Why isn't he writing the book in Batavia, where the print press is? Why is he in Canandaigua writing the book? What's he doing in Canandaigua? Who is helping him write the book? Who's his scribe? And Mormons will not put the pieces together because they're looking beyond the mark for something that's not real rather than the real history of the church to uncode the Book of Mormon that I've been warning over and over and over and over since the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, King of Judah. And so he's carried away into a vision. Even that he saw the heavens opened. That is code for sign in the heavens. So we're about to get a star date. In case you're clueless, our designation of time and our calendar system and our seasons and our days, months, years are all based upon the movements of the celestial bodies around the earth, or rather the earth as it rotates around. Yeah, and so when you talk about positioning of the celestial bodies in conjunctions, you're giving a star date from Earth. This shouldn't have been complicated. It should have been understood by everybody. We are taught this in grade school. And so when you see heavens open, it's not God sitting on his throne. There's a celestial body that represents God. The throne is a constellation. So you have to do your research. You have to figure out, okay, what would it be, what are the identifications? And so you're looking at an ancient designation, or at least classical. Too many people make the mistake of designating the classical period of the Greeks into the Romans as ancient. No, ancient period is pre-Greek, so everything up to the Persians. And the transition of the Persians is even debated as to whether they may be classical, but regardless. And so God is the Father of the Son. And it would be Jupiter who is the Sun. So the god of Jupiter is Saturn. Saturn in the constellation of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is the throne of God constellation. He's the one battling the serpents constellation. It's Ophiuchus. And it's often considered the 13th constellation because they are right there at its location. And so the 12 signs of the zodiac, or 13? Well, there's only 12 tribes of Israel, Travis. Oh, 12 tribes of Israel? That's interesting. 12 constellations, but there's 13 constellations. So wouldn't there be 13 tribes? Yeah, because Jacob the usurper had 14 kids. 14 tribes, right? Nope. One does not have seed. She has egg. Yeah, she was raped by the Shechemites. And so Simeon, same as Simon, who became Peter, the seer in Egyptian, was the one who murdered them to get revenge, he and Levi, having them circumcised. And while they were writhing in pain, they slaughtered them in revenge for raping Dinah. And so, yes, 13 tribes. No, Travis, there are 12. 12 sons. No, the birthright blessing son gets a double portion. Ephraim and Manasseh. 13, not 12. So there you have it. So Saturn in Ophiuchus, surrounded with numerous concourses of angels, the stars of heaven, the attitude of singing and praising their God. Now this in and of itself happens quite often. Saturn goes around and keeps passing Ophiuchus over and over again, so I can't tell by that when it would be. It's narrowed down because it's not when Saturn is in the other constellations. It's only when he's with Ophiuchus at the throne. But it's still too vague. But when you do your research, you find that John in Revelation has that as well. And that the Joseph Smith translation takes that verse in chapter 12, verse 5, moves it to verse 3 so that it's part of the first sign star date in Revelation chapter 12 of the birth of Jupiter in Virgo. So what was the star date? And is Saturn in Ophiuchus when that occurs? Yeah, 23rd September 2017. The Joseph Smith translation knows the date of the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, at the commencement of the latter days when Jerusalem will be destroyed. Right there in your Book of Mormon. And you've all looked beyond the mark to turn this into a literal history with magic and witchcraft and revelation of the divine, rather than trying to understand the literal church history, the real church history that has been covered up and lied to us by the prophets. And so he continues. It came to pass that he saw one descending out of the midst of heaven, literal history, space alien, Jesus. Is he a lizard creature? And he beheld that his luster was above that of the sun at noonday. Remember the language of the Egyptians? In the language of the Egyptians, the sun at noonday is Amen. Who is the Christ of Mormons again? Jesus? Why then is Adam-on-Diamond named Adam-on-Diamond? What's significant about Amen? Who's our Christ again? Here's the Christ of Mormonism. But he's coming from outer space. It's a sign of the latter day coming. But there are two. It's the latter days, the first day and the last day of the latter days. So what then is this? Because this isn't it. September 23rd, 2017 is the beginning, so the birth of the latter days, and then the death of the latter days, the end of the latter days, is this one. Have you bothered to check your Revelation? It's not in verse 12, or chapter 12. You have to keep reading. There's this thing called the Lamb of God, repeated over and over in the rewritten manuscript pages. And in Moses chapter 7, about the latter days. Yeah, Revelation 19. Ta-da! That's a star date. There it is in the Book of Mormon, from Revelation. They even tell you in 1 Nephi that, hey, yeah, all this stuff is written in the Book of Revelation by the Apostle of the Lamb named John. Are you doing that? Are you comparing the record of John with the Book of Mormon? Are you doing your research? Are you studying the Book of Mormon? Or are you just taking it as literal history and learning the stories? Memorizing scripture passages? What are you doing with your life? Do you not understand the importance of the Book of Mormon now? There will be a great and abominable church who will deceive the Mormons, who will alter and destroy Joseph's scriptures to make him a stumbling block for Mormons. And so here we have 12 others following him. Oh, we're back to chapter 12. 12 stars on her head. And so wouldn't you know it, and their brightness did exceed that of the stars in the firmament. They sacrificed their lives to give us this Book of Mormon. People were hunting them down to stop the publication of the Book of Mormon, just as they stopped the publication of William Morgan. They kept locking him up in jail. Oh, they did that to Joseph too, didn't they? But Joseph would not stay in jail. And so they murdered him. And they changed his God, changed the name of the church, took it over and took it out of America to raise up an army to go up against America, because their previous plans were thwarted by the Smiths. And I've done that with you. That's why Brigham Young was practicing polygamy, to raise up an immediate army for this latter-day time period to destroy America. But the United States came in, said, this is now American soil. It is not your kingdom of Deseret. And so they had to stop Brigham Young, send in the army. So Brigham Young then said, okay, fine. We'll then send out settlements to reclaim my land. The Mountain Meadows Massacre occurred. This was all part of the plan to overthrow America. And it's right here in the Book of Mormon for Mormons to see it, and Mormons don't see it, and are helping the great and abominable church overthrow America. As the Smiths sacrificed their lives to save America, Mormons instead are destroying it. Are taking it over. So I understand in the news, Mitt Romney has coronavirus. I have no empathy for him. I warned him. I'm his constituent. He took over for Hatch. Which Hatch, dear God. I warned him not to put Kavanaugh in, and he sent me a reply. He's my bestest buddy. I believe him. He's a great man. He likes beer. I need to watch SNL still. Before I'm no longer allowed to watch anything online. Hilarious. And so then we get into the Book of Mormon about a Book of Mormon. Because the Amun gives Lehi a book. And he reads the book, Woe, woe unto America, for I have seen thine abominations. In many things did my father read concerning America, that it should be destroyed, and the inhabitants thereof. Many should perish by the sword, and many should be carried away captive into Babylon. There's a twisting of who Babylon is in this particular case. Because Mormons interpret Doctrine and Covenants section 1 verse 16 as America, Babylon as America. O Babylon, we bid thee farewell. We're taking women captive to the mountains of Ephraim to dwell. Sex trafficking. Well, gather the Europeans. This is one thing that I discovered doing the research the other night, where I was in such pain when I finished and did the video for you, that Brigham Young purposely changed the name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and forged a certificate for his European tour so that those converts would join him in his new kingdom, where he then gave them citizenship in the territory of America in retaliation, as long as they paid a full tithe. You pay a full tithe, you get citizenship coming to America. So it was an extortion racket, and the United States shut them down with the Edmunds-Tucker Act for it, along with polygamy. But the church doesn't want you to know about that. They say, America's evil. They took away our religious freedom. So is the Book of Mormon true or not? Yes, it is, Travis. It's literal history. It's true. Dear God. What does the Book of Mormon say to those of you who believe that? What will be your consequences for believing the Book of Mormon as literal history? I will not be doing videos, like I keep saying. This is it. Why am I doing videos that you aren't going to believe in? Because I'm trying to save your life.